everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here with us today. My name is Brittany J. Rowe. I'm a program director for EcoRise. Shall we just go through just a very quick introduction for, I guess, I don't know, for panelists, if that's what we're called?
That's great. I can go next. Hi, everybody. My name is Abby Randall. I am Deputy Director with EcoRise as well, and thrilled to see you all here with us today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Dowd, and I am the Principal Consultant for Access Liminality.
As folks are coming into the room, we would love for you to drop in the chat how you're feeling today, how you're showing up in this moment. It's been a long week of some really in-depth workshops and presentations, and we're rounding it out. We'd love to hear your thoughts and see how you're feeling today. If you can just drop your thoughts into the chat, that would be wonderful. Ah, reinvigorated. Love it. Looks like from the commentary so far, it's been a really good week. Lots of motivated, inspired, hopeful, grateful. We have a really beautiful community. I feel all these things for being able to connect with everyone this week. Uplifting, re-energized. Fantastic. Thank you. As you're coming in, please share your thoughts. Take a look at what your colleagues are thinking and feeling, and bask in the positivity that folks are showing up with today. Today we are going to, we're going to spend a little bit of time with EcoRise and Jennifer here, and hopefully we have one more presenter that might make her way to us today from the National Wildlife Federation. We want to just share a little bit about the work that we do related to equity within our respective organizations, internally and externally, but then really send you all off to talk in small groups about how about different power dynamics and privilege and what this looks like in your work, and maybe start to cultivate some next steps, either personal or ones that you'll take back into your organizations to ensure that we're pushing the work of equity and environmental education forward. And I'd love to start with Abby. If you could share a little bit about what we've got going on at EcoRise, that would be great. Oh, you're muted.
I would say rookie mistake, except that I'm not a rookie, so it's just a classic mistake. Thank you so much, Brittany, and welcome to all of you. And I would invite those of you who feel comfortable to turn on your video screens. We'd love to be here with you and be able to see you, whether you have children there with you or you feel self-conscious about what's behind you. Would love to see faces. And also, before I jump in, I'd just like to offer that we are just here to share some of our experiences with our organizations. We're by no means saying that this is the right way to do it or that we have the answers. So we're here with humility and curiosity, and looking forward to learning from you all during the breakout groups as well. So as I said before, my name is Abby Randall. I am Deputy Director with EcoRise. And I wanted to share just a few of the things that EcoRise has been working on to advance race equity at our organization. We have a core value of equity, and we also, as you can see on the slide, have a statement around racial and environmental justice that we use to guide our work, because as we all know, the effects of environmental hazards and climate change disproportionately impact communities of color, and if we're not working towards racial justice, then we cannot achieve the environmental outcomes that we're looking to achieve. So about 2 years ago, particularly after being in NAAE's EE360 fellowship, I see some of my fellows in the room. It's great to have you here. After going through that experience, EcoRise implemented an anti-racist hiring policy that ensured that we were really reviewing all of the materials, the job descriptions, the interview questions, where we were sharing our job descriptions to ensure that we were having a really rich, diverse pool of applicants and interviewing in an equitable way. And so through that, we've been able to create a much more diverse staff and really see the immediate impact of representation in the work that we do. We're able to reach a much more diverse group of teachers, create trust within communities of teachers of color, and reach much larger communities of students of color. Again, these are the communities that really are being impacted most by the different topics that we're teaching about, and the tool benefit from the tools that we're providing. But I think the big thing that we've learned is that hiring and representation is not the be all and end all of race equity. And so creating systems internally to ensure that there's a culture of race equity is by far more important. And so, you know, if you don't take time to create those inclusive cultures, there's real harm can be done when you start to bring people of color into your historically white staff cultures, you know, that have characteristics of white supremacy culture. So to that end, we've been doing a lot of deep work, especially our white staff, really uncovering bias. We've formed racial identity or affinity groups to do some of that work. We've been dedicating a staff meeting every month to really sharing resources and having difficult conversations across our staff around issues relating to racial equity. And sort of one of the foundations, and Brittany, I'll turn it over to you here, is that we've created community agreements, which has created a container for us to be having these conversations and create that inclusive staff culture that centers the voices of our staff of color.
Abby, like you mentioned, you know, we're frequently asking ourselves the question of what do we need to do to move the work forward, and we look internally within the organization to think about what we're doing here, as well as how is that translating into the programming and the people that we serve. And about a year ago, we had a staff retreat, and as an organization, we asked ourselves, what do we need to commit to in order to move the work forward? And we put our heads together and our hearts together, and we filled the walls of a room with all of our ideas around you know, our visions for equity in our organization, in environmental education, and just the world at large, really. And following the retreat, the equity working group that Abby mentioned came together. She and I are both a member of the group. We came together and we distilled all of the ideas into these two statements. And I'll read them for you and just give you a moment to just think about them. We are committed to creating and maintaining a culture where equity, curiosity, vulnerability, and growth are fostered. And we are committed to challenging ourselves and others to exist in the space of discomfort in order to be openly authentic, uncover our biases, and give and receive feedback. And the reason I read these aloud to you is to model what we do as an organization. Every time we have a meeting, we pull these up, we make sure that the voices of the organization are reading this so we can hear it, it can sink in. I think that every time we hear these, no matter what the meeting is, what the convening is, we take something different from it. We internalize something a little different. And we use these to guide our conversations and to frame our thinking around the work that we do. And I find them especially heartening. You know, as a staff member of color, I love that we have these. I love that we have these containers that will support us and guide us as we're doing really what is messy work in a lot of instances, because like we said, we're not experts on this, and everyone is coming with a different set of challenges and a different set of experiences and ideas. And so this is just something we wanted to share with you that we utilize. And at our staff retreat this year, just a few weeks ago, we came back and we looked at these again and said, are these serving us? And we workshopped them and realized that in a lot of instances they were serving us, but then in other instances there were questions after a year of what does it mean to live in a space of discomfort? What does it mean to uncover our biases? And so we spent some time together evaluating and making sure that these were still what we need to help us continue the conversation and continue the work. And we'll just come back to them as often as we need to make sure they're doing what they're intended to do. I would love to pass it on to Jennifer Dowd, so you can share a little bit about what you're doing with Access Liminality.
Sure. Thank you both, and thank you for sharing the work that you're doing and the continuously iterative process that you're taking towards it. Hi again, everybody. I'm Jennifer Dowd, and I've been working in education for about 17 years in various different positions, from formal to informal education, with the nation's largest statewide and then the largest nationwide conservation education organizations. And now with Access Liminality, I'm here to really support schools, nonprofits, and equity consultants to implement key projects through the lens of equity, justice, and sustainability. So I have been supporting organizations to implement equity evaluations on both the organizational level, but then also the individual learning level. So this is a tool that has been developed from researching best practices, both through written literature, but then also through practice with environmental groups across the nation, schools, and other First Nations peoples. And the purpose of this form, which I'm going to drop into the chat box and make accessible to everybody here. You'll find that, oh, that just went privately, but now it's public. You can go ahead and access this form. And these are just a sampling of some of the ways that you can start to personally assess, where you are ready to intervene in your own systems. So this is meant for teachers, administrators, education program managers, revisers, developers, to start including equity and justice as a lens through which professional decisions are made. And it's really meant to forward two agendas to create that common language around what practices are being used to implement programs that address equity and justice issues in communities, and serve as a learning assessment. So as a learning assessment, you can look at your current practices, identify learning goals, and it's done through that force system level approach to view your decision making. So internalized, interpersonal, institutional, and ideological. And the fifth framework is and right here is just a sample again of some leadership reflection questions, so that, which is an essential part of any leadership practice. So, these are on the right side of the screen are a couple of different questions that you can ask yourself when you get your individual readout back. Start thinking about, how can I focus my attention to activate one or two of these within my sphere of influence? And what's one practice that I can learn about and integrate in my professional practice this year? So you can go ahead and go on to the next slide. Thank you. So, as new topics, incidents, and threats of environmental degradation emerge, as a society, we also have to be very critical of the associated movements that seek to address those issues. Who's being represented? Whose voices are missing? Which entities hold socio-political power? Which entities are most vulnerable to inequitable decision-making? These are some of the innumerable questions that must be integrated into our consideration of the past, the present, and the future environmental movements. We're here to support the implementation of key projects through an equity, justice, and sustainability lens. And I'm going to pop in a second form, which is also embedded in the first one I popped up there. And in the second one, this is just an opportunity to stay connected with a group of growing practitioners who are thinking about the same things. One of the things that we'll be offering over the course of the year is a professional learning community facilitation, bi-monthly, 6 topics. And then there's just listed a few of the different topics that Tiffany, Carrie, and I will be working to facilitate through, and the rest will be selected iteratively based on the people who want to participate. So I'd love to stay connected with any of you field practitioners who are, ready to take that kind of step forward.
Thanks, Jennifer. We unfortunately aren't going to get to hear from a partner friend of ours with the National Wildlife Federation today. All the technology issues I can imagine you guys can also imagine. So we're going to dive into small groups, and we really encourage you to start digging into conversation with one another. We're going to try to keep the group super small, and we would love for you to have a discussion on these 2 things. So how does race, power, and privilege manifest while building relationships within your work? And then what are some next steps that might come up? And however you interpret these questions is the right way to interpret these questions today. These are questions that we all 3 of us, me, Jennifer, and Abby, think about and question within our organization that gets us to doing the things that we're doing and trying the things that we're trying. And so we would love for you all to explore these a little bit and figure out some of the roots so that you can see where you want to go from here. We will spend a good solid, let's say 15 minutes in groups talking with each other. We highly encourage you to show up assuming the best of one another and allowing yourselves to be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable today and seeing where it takes you.
Welcome back, everyone. We tried to give you quite a solid amount of time, but I'm sure for most folks it felt too short. I know we certainly got cut off in our group. We have just a few minutes left. Would love to hear either verbally or in the chat any sort of takeaways, something that you learned, a next step that you, kind of an intention that was shared or something you heard from others.
I'll go. I was in our group, I was sharing that I've been invited to participate with a local group that's come out of the Black Lives Matter protests. And they are really cool and really fun, but like we got to a meeting, what I thought was a meeting and my other friend thought was a meeting, and then it turned into just hanging out and not getting anything done. And I recognize that time and agendas may be a white construct, but how can we respectfully nudge people to also respect our time and build agendas? And so we talked about how, maybe the thing is we just need to have time to hang out and socialize, but clearly define what's the social part and what's the work planning part.
Thank you, Ginger, so much for sharing. In our organization, we've been digging deep into the characteristics of white supremacy culture and that sense of urgency characteristic, and having long conversations that sound similar to that one, and about challenging ourselves in the way that we use agendas or perceive time. So thank you so much for sharing.
Hi, my name's Shayla Smith. In our group, I think we all basically only had time to talk about the first question, didn't quite have time to get to the second question. And one of the things I was just thinking after talking to my group, and I think refers back to what Ginger was talking, is as allies, we have to build trust with the folks we're working with. And maybe you have to look at that spending time together and getting to know people as people as part of the work you're doing, is building that trust so that they know who you are. I'm just speaking off the top of my head here. I don't know if I'm right on this, but I think that's one of the things to start thinking about too, is you can't come in with an agenda to work together with folks you don't know. It's really, really hard, especially if they don't trust you and you're coming in with a white face as somebody in power, and having that construct already on your side of how do you build the trust to work together.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I saw in the chat an idea from Hannah sharing Karen's idea about the flipped classroom concept to kind of do the work ahead of time, or do some of the reading and sharing.
Yeah, we were just talking about how teachers will use the idea of a flipped classroom so that the work that's being done together in the classroom is to helping one another, not just the teacher talking to the students. Something else that was just coming up for me is working. A long time ago, I had the chance to go and volunteer in Northern Canada, really, really far north, like Arctic Circle north. And one of the things that I learned there, I met a couple of people who are Inuit, and they said that white people always come and then they leave. And I was like, oh, okay. And then so I've reflected that on that a lot. But that's kind of goes back to what that other lady was saying just now about building trust with community, is that if you aren't part of that community, like you don't identify as Black or what other culture or race, it might be hard for that community to accept you if there's a fear of just coming in, doing your work, your project, and then leaving.
Yeah, thank you, Karen, for sharing. That reminds me of white saviorism and all of the dynamics of power and privilege involved in that.
Conversations like these, 15 minutes is laughable to have a conversation like this. So I just have to say I appreciate everyone jumping in and doing, and just talking through it. For some of you, your next steps might be, let me just read an article. Some terms came out today I haven't heard yet. What are the characteristics of white supremacy culture? What does it mean? What is white saviorism? Who are the people in my community? Let me just have a look and learn. And I think that's always a really good place to start, and just continue your personal learning, and show up the way you show up sets an example, I think, for how other people can show up, and just understand, as I can see with some of the folks here, that it's not very comfortable work, I think, for a lot of folks. Everyone involved, it's really uncomfortable. And if you can understand that and accept that, and yet still move forward, I think we'll make strides. I feel really heartened by everyone coming today and just starting to talk about it in the first place. This is the thing to do. I did learn that NAAEE has an equity and inclusion group, and there are some events and discussions. And so if you're on EE Pro, just log into your account, you'll find the group. It's super easy. It's just right there in your face, which is fantastic. But I joined the group the other day, and I'm really looking forward to staying connected with this community, and seeing what's out there and learning from you all in the same way that I hope I might be able to bring something to the table myself. It's been a pleasure being with you all today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. And we can stick around for a few minutes. And if you have questions about what we shared in the beginning, we'd be happy to stay in dialogue.